Hi Stitchers, I thought today I would do a tutorial on how to calculate your fabric size for your cross stitch project. I see this question all the time, and it's a basic stitching skill consisting of basic math skills, and I think it's something that every stitcher should know how to do. It's not difficult, it's third grade math, so I'm going to run through it. I'm going to show you how to do the math, and I'm going to run through some common scenarios that stitchers encounter when trying to figure out fabric size. So I hope you will learn from it, and let's get started. So here's what you'll need. You need to know the stitch count listed on your chart. Every chart has a stitch count listed, and so you need to know that. Whether it's 100 by 200 or 89 by 122 or 999 by 999, you need to know the stitch count on the chart. The next thing you need is the count of the fabric you intend to use to stitch with. It doesn't matter what it says on the chart. You need the fabric that you intend to stitch with. And you need to know if you're stitching over 1 or over 2. And then if you wish, you need a calculator. If you don't want to do the math yourself, grab a calculator to help you do the math. That's all you need. I told you this is very simple. So you just need your stitch count, your fabric, your calculator, and you're ready to go. So here's how to do the math. You take each number in your stitch count and you divide it by the count of the fabric. And then you add 6 to each of those numbers. So you take the length of the design and you divide by the count in your fabric and you add 6. And then you take the stitch count of the width of your design and you divide it by the count of your fabric and you add 6. And those two numbers together is the size of the fabric that you need. So the basic formula is stitch count divided by fabric count plus 6 for each side of your design. So our first example is you have a stitch count of 150 by 200 stitches, and you want to stitch it on the fabric called for in the design, which is 14 count Aida. So you take your first number, 150, and you divide it by 14. And that comes out to 10.71 inches. And you add 6 to that, so the first side of your fabric is going to be 16.71 inches. And then the second number, 200, and you divide it by 14, and you get 14.28 inches. And so you're going to add 6 to that, and you get 20.28 inches. And now you know that your design is going to be 16.71 inches by 20.28 inches. Or for simplicity's sake, the fabric you need is going to be 17 inches by 21 inches. Now our second example is if you want to change this fabric size. So say you bought a kit that includes 14 count Aida, but you decide that you want to stitch it on 18 count Aida instead. So you're going to ignore the 14 and you're going to do all your math with the 18. So the kit design is 112 stitches wide. So you're going to divide 112 by 18 and you get 6.22 inches, and you're going to add 6 to that. So you get 12.22 inches. And then the kit design is 140 stitches high. So you're going to divide 140 by 18 and you get 7.77 inches, and you're going to add 6 to that, so you're going to get 13.77 inches. And so now you know your fabric size needs to be about 12 1/4 by 13 3/4, or if you want to make it simple, 13 by 14. So for our next example, we're going to switch from Aida to linen. So your pattern calls for 14 count Aida, but you decide that you want to stitch it over 2 on 28 count linen. So the first thing is, remember that when you stitch over 2 threads, you have to cut the number of stitches per inch in half. So if you're stitching on 28 count linen, you're going to have 14 stitches to the inch. So you're going to calculate your fabric the same way you did for the 14 count fabric. that we did on our first example. So we're going back to our first example, and we're going to do the math exactly the same way. Take each side of the stitch count, divide it by 14, add 6 to each number, and that is the size of your fabric. If you're working with a different size linen, if you're working with 32 count, 36 count, 40 count, you're going to divide that number in half and use that number for your math. If you're working with 32, you would divide by 16. If you're working with 36, you would divide by 18. If you're working with 40, you divide by 20. And the math is always the same. So our last example is going to be for stitching over 1. So let's say you found a Haid design that you fell in love with, and the stitch count on the Haid design is 300 by 500. And you want to stitch it over 1 on 25 count Lugana. Now since this time you're stitching over 1, that means you're going to have 25 stitches to the inch, so you're going to do all your math with 25. 300 stitches divided by 25 is 12, and you're going to add 6 because you need room to frame, and that's 18 inches. 500 stitches divided by 25 is 20. 20 plus 6 is 26. So your fabric for your over 1 Haid needs to be 18 by 26. See, now wasn't that easy? That's all there is to it. It's just a little bit of basic math, and you have your fabric size, and you can convert from any size fabric to any other size fabric. You can convert from linen to Aida, from Aida to linen. It's no matter how you do it, the math is always the same. You divide your stitch count by your fabric count and you add 6. That's all there is to it. It's not any more complicated than that. So I hope you found that helpful, and I hope you will be able to use this in the future for all of your years and years of stitching enjoyment. I will see you guys next time. Bye.